All right, welcome everyone. It's Monday with Masami. Can you believe it? It's Monday again, and it's October 5th, 2020. All right, so let's take a moment before we get started on just finding your space. And finding your space means it's good to just kind of look around, like look around spatially where you're at right now. And look up, look down, wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, and also press your hands up against your thighs and just feel that you exist in this body. And also whatever fashion you like, just kind of maybe brush your skin, face, hair, neck, just everywhere, maybe twist a little bit, look side to side. Roll your shoulders. I like actually kind of this type of stimulation, just, just a little gentle slap, I guess. And right around the kidney 27 is great spot too. And down the legs. And especially your kidneys, that your kidneys are the size of your own fists. So you can bring them behind you and you'll go directly to kidneys, okay? Nobody's kidneys are your size, so your fist size. So make sure you know that, okay? That's how special they are. So then you can kind of pound is not the word, I guess, just to really stimulate that area, okay? All right, and then you can rub it. And another area that's really good to use your fists for are your piriformis. So that'll be your upper glutes area. Okay. So you might want to stimulate that. Because did you know, okay, this is kind of a funny things that I know about bodies, right? There are 3 areas of your bodies that are actually cold. Okay. Feet, like your toes, tend to be cold. Your ears, your earlobes are usually cold, a colder part of your body, and then your glutes, okay? So it's good to actually use your fists and bring some blood flow. I'm gonna actually stand up and do that for myself. You can probably hear it, right? So whenever I go back to Japan, I see my mother doing it, but I often see older generations doing a lot of this using your own fists. And also along the line of your IT bands are great for your gallbladder. And then your inner thighs, you use your fists and just lightly, you don't need to bruise yourself, okay? Go down all the way down if it's comfortable, down your calves. That's your liver meridians. And then you can do the outer, that's your gallbladder meridian, so they work together, all right? Good. So then let's slowly come back to your sitting, and you'll feel like a sense of prana moving through. And if you've been sitting all day, this is great. It just will awaken you, ignites the heat, okay? So let's take a moment and just either close your eyes or look a little bit ahead of you. And then come back to your own breath. And if you have some thoughts, you got residual things that you've been working on and they're just coming and going in your mind, just allow that to flow by, just as if you're looking at the river right now. One thought to the next. Sorry, I'm asking. Okay, yeah, so let's just allow the flow to happen. And see if you can start to focus gently towards your exhales. only on your exhales now. Don't worry about your inhales. Just see if you could notice your exhales. Cool air coming in through your nostrils, and slightly warmer air coming out of your nostrils. Let's do 3 more, your own rhythmic breathing. And see if you could start to introduce a little bit of pause between your inhales and your exhales. And then after you exhale, if you could just pause for a moment and repeat back into inhale. So introduce a slight pause, as if you're listening to your own music. And slowly wiggle your toes and your fingers. Roll your shoulders a couple of times. And then coming back. All right. Well, how did that feel? If you could just maybe, yeah, some of you thumbs up. It's nice to come back, right? Come back home. Like a midday, instead of midday biscuits and tea, we're having a little fist relationship. I don't know. We need to come up with a good name for fist exercise, but it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. It's very rhythmic, and that's one of the things that's very primal to our human bodies, is that we do well with rhythms, okay? Because way before we had pianos, and way before we had guitars, and way before we had instruments, musical instruments, what do we have? We have drums, right? We've all drummed. Anybody can drum. The rhythm was always there for us as part of our living. And when you're in mother's womb, what you hear is kind of that drumming sounds of your mother's heartbeat, right? So it's good to make that sounds while you're going through your body, all right? So yeah, I'm glad that we could do that for ourselves. And I wanted to start with a quote. And before that, Chris, do you mind going to get my headphones? Do you mind? It's upstairs. Okay, thank you. I'm going to read this quote from Hans Selye. It's spelled Selye. And I wondered if any of you know about him before I tell you a little bit, and I'll read his quote. Hans Selye. He was born in early 1900s, and he wrote the book. He is basically the father of somebody that brought the idea of stress to the Western world, or maybe to the world. He even basically coined this idea of stress. And he wrote he's actually considered to be the father of stress research. And he wrote the book in 1956 called The Stress of Life. And if you're in the health and wellness industry, I would highly recommend, thank you. Highly recommend that you get this book, The Stress of Life. I do believe that they're still printing it, because it's just one of those classic books, right? And until that time, people really didn't talk about stress. People talked about, difficulties and challenges and things like that. But he's basically the first person to bring life stressors and how that impacts our physiology and in our bodies inside, but our minds, our blood pressure, our digestion, our mental health, all those things. So he is basically the father of stress research. So if you've never heard of him, I would, definitely look him up. And Hans is Hans. Okay. So the short quote, and I just kind of laughed out loud when I read this quote this morning, says the human body, like the tires on a car or the rug on a floor, wears longest when it wears evenly. Okay. Like the human body, like the tires on a car or the rug on a floor, wears longest when it wears evenly. And I first thought, that's kind of funny that he's, talking about rugs and cars as human bodies. Like, we're more than rugs and cars, is what my initial thought was. Then I read on and I was like, oh, wait a minute. This might be an interesting topic to kind of bring up in terms of the October theme, right? The October theme, if you haven't listened to my energy body checkup that I just recorded last week, I highly recommend that you listen to that, because I've been really feeling about the importance of, putting more into your energy bank account this month. And you want to do the best you can to put more resources, energetic flow, maybe even more ways that you can tap into your deepest metabolic energy and deepest sense of calmness in your energy bank account. So I thought, when I read that quote this morning, I thought that kind of goes along with what I'm talking about, because you don't want to use up your energy savings account too quickly that it wears out. Basically, you have nothing left by the time November and December comes. Right? So you want to look at your life and say, what areas of my life am I wearing thin? What areas of my life am I using up my energy? So that was something that I wanted to put it out there and see, if any of you want to put it on the chat while I hook this up. Okay. Is if you've noticed any in your life in the last couple of months, really the entire year, but what areas of your life you're wearing up. So relationship, digestion, sleep, mental health, your weight issues, hormone issues. And then even I wrote down a couple things obviously like nutrition. In my case, I feel like I am worn thin in the areas of the need for silence. I generally every year I take about 10 days to go to some kind of a silent retreat. And this year the retreats are not open, but also it's just that we have so much smoke here from the fires that I couldn't find the ways to really find that kind of a place nearby. And one of the retreat places that I usually go to, some of the buildings have burnt down because of the recent fires that are going on here. So there's a lot going on here, but in your life as well. But I'm wearing pretty thin in terms of the areas of I'm needing some unplugged time and silence. And that goes for media information, that goes for social media stuff, it's news. Whether you choose not to listen to the news or not, the vibration, the frequencies are in the air. It's in your DNA, or not DNA, but in your system, in your cells now. So that's the areas I'm definitely feeling like there's too much traffic going on in that areas of the rug, and that part of the tire is wearing thin for me. And then another thing I was thinking about was sometimes what wears people thin is indecision or misinformation or things that you're just not clear. So, in the beginning I saw a lot people were saying, is this COVID thing real, for real?
or should I be preparing for this? And right from the beginning, I always said, yes, you need to prepare for this. This is serious. We need to take it seriously, and we can't take these kind of things lightly. So it's these kind of a misinformation, let's say, or disinformation, or manipulated information, or not knowing, that can be a very much of a wear and tear for our psyche as collective. Also, indecision is a big one too. And I think a lot of us struggle with decision making right now because we just don't know. Like, let's say, big decisions that I had to work with some of my clients over the summer was, should I send my child to school? Should I send my college kids back to campuses? I've had multiple moms that were having major decision issues with that, and that was stressors for them. And then indecisions on their own lives, like, should I take my business all online, or should I keep my office? Or should I stay in this relationship? Or what should I do about, the fill the blank, really, what should I do with this? And the indecision can be really taxing to our system. So right now, I would like for all of you in the month of October to make some kind of a decision, knowing that you can backtrack it. Okay, or you can delete it, and you can change your decision later on, and it's okay to do that, because that requires a little bit of less energy than not making a decision and holding back on moving forward, because the flow is going to be important. Life works better when there's a flow. Life works less efficiently and starts to build up toxins and builds up crud, and things starts to smell in the pond, if the flow isn't there, right? So at least create some kind of even a small flow. So if you're having issues with decision making right now, make the steps to just say, I think I'm going to do that. And I'm going to set stages, whatever steps you need to do to say yes or no. And even maybe is okay, but make some kind of a decision on whatever that's going on in your life, because that can be like weighted vest, okay, when you don't make the decision. Another thing that I'm personally, I've worked on it for a long time, for years, so it's a much less issue for me now, but the idea of perfection. And I see this with women a lot, but it's to be perfect. So before you send out an email, it needs to look perfect. Or before I set out to do something, it must look perfect. Or whatever I do has to look a certain way. But the fact is that the universe, we live in the chaos, universal chaos. It's cosmic chaos, okay? Within the cosmic chaos, I guess there is some kind of an order, but we don't know what that is. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for the perfection, whatever that means to you, to move into the flow. So go into the river. Don't just look at the river, but go dip your toes in the river. Okay, check out the temperature. Check in to see what can you do in this moment. And don't let the perfection, stop you and plug you and cork you. Okay. And other things were in October, I think it's so important that we go from not just the mindfulness practice. Mindfulness is that word. Mindfulness has been thrown a lot, so I'm sure many of you know what that means, but it's body fullness. So mindfulness, but body fullness. So make these decisions, not just with your mind, okay, but make it with your heart, make it with your gut. So there are 3 minds that we've been working on. Make decisions based on those. Okay, so those are a couple of things I wanted to mention. And coming back to this stress issue, and I'll share some of my personal things that it's been happening with my own body too this entire year. But we talk a lot about traumas, you know, and then when you hear the word trauma, and on the side note, Chris and I are trauma informed practitioners, and we continuously take courses and certifications to be trauma informed practitioners. But it's very important to understand that I mean, I've never met anybody that's never been through some kind of a trauma. But when we hear the word trauma, we think of like a capital T traumas, right? Just like a giant trauma, like going through some natural disasters, or going through a major divorce, or maybe family members been incarcerated, and, you know, physical abuse, sexual abuse. Those are the capital T traumas that we think of. But what I've been noticing this year is these micro tremors, micro aftershocks, traumas. And that's where we're on right now. And this is what I talked about on the October Energy Body Checkup recording that I did. Is I really hesitated to even talk about it at first. I thought, oh, should I even bring up this subject of earthquakes and aftershocks? But I thought, no, I really need to bring this up, because I kept feeling inside my body that was just a micro movements that I was feeling inside me. And it's building up and building up and building up. So imagine that, you know, like I said in the recording, after the two major earthquakes that we experienced in my hometown, and they were over 7.2 and 7.4, something like that. So it was a pretty devastating earthquakes that really destroyed a lot of things. But what was difficult, I would say, is those initial shocks are hard enough for human bodies and human beings to deal with. So I want you to think about, what are the earthquakes that we've just experienced? If you live in the United States, what are they for you? Okay. And I'm not going to really put information in your minds, but I want you to think about on the national level and a country level, and then take it out to the earthly level. You know, there's been multiple major earthquakes. But what we're dealing with is the aftershocks also. So after we had my hometown, you know, was struck by two earthquakes, we had these aftershocks that went on and on and on every single day. And it'll be in the middle of the night and it'll start shaking. And it's not as strong, like it'll be 5.5, it might be even 6.0. And some of them are 4 point something, some of them are 1 point something, but they were shaking, the earth was shaking constantly. And I feel like that's where we are at. So you're always on top of something that is not quite stable. Okay. So that is a micro trauma that we're dealing with. And I realized that just recently, I thought, you know, I've been doing so much better this year in terms of my thyroid, my energy, just the overall, my mental health. You know, I felt really good. But I have to say, you know, and I'm going to share this, and I've mentioned this once last time, that clumps of my hair started to come out in the last, I would say 2-3 weeks. And I thought, what in the world is happening? Because that has never happened to me before. But when I've worked with clients in the past, I would get clients that say, I'm losing my hair and I need to work on it. What's going on with me? And I always have to say to them, we have to go back about 6 to 8 months and maybe even longer prior to having your hair come out or losing your hair. What was going on in your life at that time? So I had to do the same thing, because I started to worry. But at the same time, I feel so good right now. I've come through really difficult months and I've come out of that. I feel great. So why now? But why not now is kind of a question right now. So I stayed with that question for a long time over the weekend. And I realized that, wow, these micro tremors, these aftershocks that's been going on this entire year has finally caught up to me. And now my body is ready to let go. And my body is ready to have the changing of the guards, right? So my old hair really needed to change, and the new hair is ready to come out. That's what I'm witnessing. And I'm standing at when they're changing the guards and going, you know, where are they going, and why are they leaving, and why are the new ones coming in? Okay, that's kind of what October is. It's like a changing of the guards. Okay, so think about some things in your life that are you're noticing that, wow, I'm sensing something, it's weird, why am I feeling that right now? Don't think about it in the last couple of weeks. Think way back. Okay, about 6 months, 8 months, and then see what's been the micro tremors that you've been experiencing. So that's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. And how to create more savings account, to grow your savings account, energy savings account. What can you do? So I'm curious about what some of you are doing to add that back in. And for me, it's really a moment of creating more silence and creating pauses during the day. And then when it comes to silence, is to have a little bit more clear listening towards the relationship I have with me. What is me in the relationship that I have within myself? And that's very difficult to tap into if you're always noisy inside you and outside of you. So I'm just really curious what all of you are doing. So more peace and quiet and tons of self-love. Yeah, Sue, you're right. And Richard said, I've been wearing thin with some relationship issues. I've been wearing thin with those being who have been so dedicated to increasing their own power, regardless of the effects on others. Yeah. And Ariel says, I've already used up all my reserves, right, in the savings account. Oh boy. Less screen time with more focus on myself and spending time in quiet. I've had it with noise. And I'm not just talking about the noise in the neighborhood, and you know what I mean. It's just the noise that would try to penetrate into my cells and almost like try to change my cellular makeup almost. That's how invasive the noise is right now. So you want to work on your boundaries in terms of intercellular boundaries, and things that make you go into the place of you're so noisy you can't hear your own self. On the practical note, and I'll give you some of it just top of my head, I haven't even thought about this, but are things like overeating is actually very noisy to your body. Constantly snacking is also very noisy to your body. Constipation, toxic air, not sweating enough. So if you don't have the access to infrared saunas, I would say you might want to take a bath and make sure you're sweating to decrease the noise in your cells. Can you come up with other ones, Chris? Maybe you could chime in other noise on the practical level.
I think we've heard from a couple of people. I think it was Lori that mentioned earlier in the chat that it's doing things like overscheduling yourself, signing up for too many classes. it's almost like compensating for the lack of grounding right now by
Mm,
filling it up with just busyness. And so busyness is a kind of noise also.
right, right, right. Hmm. Why don't we just take a moment, um, just 1 minute or so. Let's just sit with your own cells, with your own blood flow, sit with your own lymphatic system, and sit with your own breath. Sit with your own skin. Can you feel your skin for a moment? There's a definite boundaries, right, between your skin and the outside air. And that's us sitting with it for even a less than a minute. I just watched the clock and it was less than a minute. We just sat with it. And I think that will increase your energy savings account, what you just did. Ariel, can you feel that? Yeah. It kind of just builds it back up, right? So you don't get charged, right? Because I'm sure I have had that kind of savings account before, that if you don't have minimum of certain amount, even though you have money in there, they charge you fees because you didn't have the minimum $15 or something like that. So why don't we keep the $15 by having the moment of silence and just notice your inner cells. And if you go from cells to blood flow to lymphatic to your skin, and you want to go through different organs, that's fine. But just sit with it for 1 minute and build it back up. Then you don't get charged. And maybe that's all we can do this month, just so we don't get the fees taken out. Yeah. Yeah. So Lynn said, yeah, I ended a relationship that felt disrespectful and depleted me. Feels good to not hear someone always complaining or speak such different beliefs as myself. Now much more quiet time, more laughter with movies and etc. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like after the silence, it's easier for us to laugh. Don't you think? It's just easier for us to just what I'm visualizing right now is the baby's laughter. Those babies that just cackle? Is that the word? That just start laughing? Okay. It just imagine that. That's so much easier to imagine if you're not so noisy inside you. What are some of the noise that we create inside? It's inside noise. It's on a cellular level noise. And I think it's sometimes water can be a noise if you drink water that is not filtered and has a lot of chemicals put into it, fluoride and chlorine. Those can be very noisy to our cells because after all, we're 60% water, right? Even for babies are like 70-80% water. That's why they're so pudgy, right? So that can be a noisemaker inside us. Allergies, food allergies, seasonal allergies, that can be a noise inside us. Okay, so maybe you haven't thought about those things as noise, but that can be, something to think about that is distracting you and you're unable to think straight. Another things like phlegm, mucus, and also noise that actually dampened your inner awareness is yeast and fungus and mold. And that was really difficult for us because our toilet started to leak in probably early this year, Chris, huh? And we probably didn't even know because it saturated from upstairs and then saturated our downstairs. It must have taken a long time to be having that drip. So we were exposed to a lot of mold and toxic things that we were ripping apart. And I do think that I'm so sensitive to mold that might have had an impact on my hair and my hormones. So that can be a noise inside your cells. So yeah, those are a couple of the things that I'm thinking. Chris, you have anything to add?
Yeah, this is a tough topic because I'm just thinking about how many of us are maxed out right now. And so I was helping a friend yesterday work on rebuilding his house. And he's somebody who has gone through a lot of extreme physical adversity. I won't go into all of his details right now, but even despite of that, he's in constant pain. He's had dozens of reconstructive surgeries, but he's very mentally strong. And so he'll push and push and push. And at one point, I had to just make both of us stop. And I made the excuse of having a lunch break. But we just sat down and just sat still for a few minutes. And after about 5 minutes, he said, "Thanks for making me do that," because I was a lot more tired than I realized, and I would have just pushed through until I crashed. And that's what we do so much of the time is we, back to the, energy bank account or metabolic reserve, whatever you want to call it. We do this so often that we think that we can just push through on the fumes and still be okay, but we end up paying the late fees and the overdraft charges, in the following days and weeks and months. So yeah, I think that's what comes to mind for me, and I'm aware of myself doing it. It's kind of in the air right now. That just so many of us. I feel like part of it is compensating for the craziness around us. We're grasping for things that we can control, things that are stable, things that are, I don't know, bring us a different experience from the one that's getting splashed all over us every day. It's like every day the news cycle is a muddy puddle and you're a pedestrian as a bus goes by, right? So it's just, I don't know. I feel like that's a lot of what we're doing is filling our buckets with what we think are good things, but they wind up being more stressors.
Well, with that, let's do one practice together. Okay. It's a mixture of Peter Levine's work and medical qigong and something that I have kind of mixed it up and created it. But I love the sounds of, the babies make those, right? Or, right? The babies love to kind of like make sounds through the lips. And last Monday, I talked about, it's good to kind of just touch the upper lip, right? And that takes you to the parasympathetic. So you can even tap the upper lip or just touch it and just see if you could just, notice your body calming down. And then as you breathe out, and you can relax your hand, but you could just do that like a VOO sound, like voo, voo. Okay. So do that a couple of times, everyone. So voo. So that's a Peter Levine's work. And another one that I love is the trembling horse. And some of you know and have done this with me, but you raise your arms and just kind of shake your hands and come down and go. You know, the horses do this, right? So come up and go. And shake your body as you come up too. Okay. Reaching up and go. See, animals know, right? And there's a really cool book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, right? That's kind of because they know how to do the trembling horse. They know how to do voo. Okay. So if it works, try doing the, is that the raspberries? Is that what's called in this country, right? So it just do that as often as you can. Because this jawline, we can crush more weight with the jaw than you can lift with your own arms. Okay. This is a tremendously powerful part of your body that we hold on to so much tension here. And then guess where your major lymphatic drainage is from your brain? Right here, right through the jaw. Okay. And then it's actually back of the sinuses and the roof of your mouth. Okay. So you know that you've seen me do the lymphatic massage for the brain here before. But when you do the relax the jaw and you do, or stick your tongue out and, you know, do the lion face like in a yoga class, when you do those, you are actually releasing the lymphatic system right here to drain your brain. Okay, so your brain has this lymphatic system called glymphatic system, and Chris can write it on the chat how glymphatic is, but glymphatic system is your brain basically detoxing every single day. And if your jaw is tight or you clench at night, you grind your teeth, okay, your glymphatic system is going to get quite stuck in there, okay? Or if you have food allergies or airborne allergies, or you're exposed to mold, and your lymphatic system is going to be clogged up, then you don't drain that. So one of the things you want to do is doing that kind of a trembling horse or making the voo sounds to open it up and relax the jaw. And you can even go and massage your own jaw and notice and go, oh my gosh, I am tight. I am generally very tight in this area, right in there. Okay. So do things like that to release, so you're basically not accumulating more stressors and not enough energy bank account, right? So I think that's going to be important to deal with your micro traumas, the aftershocks that you've been dealing with. And last thought that I wanted to share, and if we don't have any questions, we'll wrap up. But, you know, when you're in the aftershocks, going back to when we went back to Japan to deal with this, we had to assess the situation and get going on what needed to be addressed at that moment and what needed to get done in that moment and what is crucial for you right now. So think about, don't give up on life. Okay. Don't just sit back and say, I'm done. I can't deal with this anymore. But in the micro tremors that we're experiencing and the aftershocks that we're in, assess the situation in your life and say, these are the things I really need to address today. And I'm not going to put off this. I am going to take care of X, Y, and Z today. And so you have to always work with your mind and your heart. How does that feel to you? Can you digest that information and can you get going on that? So make sure you assess the situation and don't give up and keep moving forward, even one step at a time. Okay. And, you know, obviously you have to take care of yourself. When you have all this external stressors and the earth is shaking, okay, you've got to eat probably better than ever before. You have to hydrate yourself. You have to make sure you're getting enough minerals, make sure you're getting good sea salt, you're getting good iodine, you're getting different magnesiums, and making sure that your mineral levels are good, okay? So that you can stay sane, okay? Because when you're stressed, you're going to start to lose vital nutrients like minerals I've just listed. And also you're going to lose, particularly magnesium, you're going to lose a lot, okay? So you may have to up your magnesium this month. And then also you need to look into B vitamins. B12 might be a very important thing for you to look into this month, okay? Just because you're going to be dealing with the constant stressors. This isn't some occasional big bumps, okay? It's constant right now. So make sure you check in with your body, like I said on that call, and, build your inner resources, inner relationships with you, but also find maybe core friends. I'm one of those people that never really have had tons of friends. I know a lot of people, but I've never had like lots of close friends, and that's what works for me. So whatever way that works for you, find resources in those close relationships, and make sure you have a daily practice around your energy bank account and keep the flow going. Notice it anytime you get constipated this month to say, oh, I need to work on my constipation, okay? Notice it anytime you feel your lymphatic system is clogged up, like your lymph nodes feel swollen, or your ankles are starting to see like sock marks a lot in the midday into the evening. That means your lymphatic system is not moving through. And on the side note, when your lymphatic system is getting clogged up, go and search if you have any scar tissues in your body, okay? Almost no one on this earth can go through their lives without having some kind of scar tissues. So if you've had C-sections, that's a big scar tissue. I want you to massage that scar tissues, okay, using certain oils, essential oils. Those will be fine, okay? Whatever that you feel comfortable with. Red light's great too, but massage your scar tissues, even though it happened 25 years ago, even though it happened 50 years ago. Your scar tissues can be limiting and blocking your energy flow. And that shows up on your edema. So attend to your scar tissues to keep the flow, okay? And eat seasonally supported foods. Start shifting away from, if you live in a northern hemisphere, shift away from always eating raw foods and raw vegetables and raw fruits to eating a little bit more warming foods, cooked foods. Maybe start to mix a little more cooked foods into it. You don't have to go 100% cooked yet, but you need to start introducing cooked foods. And, like I said on that call, but don't lose sight of your future goals, future desire. That is March 2021. Okay. So those are a couple things I have for you. I hope some of them will be helpful. Okay. Oh, and Lynn actually had a question and we were going to address that today. So, oops, where did she go? Oh, so I'm going to ask, and then we will wrap up. So ask to unmute. There you go.
Hi.
Hi, Lynn. Okay. So should I talk about that broccoli and cauliflower and?
Yes, please.
All right. So, whenever we work with clients with the thyroid issues, and most thyroid issues are hypothyroidism, right? So Hashimoto's or, other autoimmune conditions of a hypothyroid functions. So that generally shows up as, cold fingers and toes, or their metabolic rate has come down and you can't lose the weight, or actually having like goiters or swollen glands right in this area. There's so many other things that will come up, like skin just doesn't feel plump, or it starts to get really dried up, all those things, hair loss, right? And so I looked into the thyroid issues for myself too, but that's not my issue. Mine is definitely detox, because I was so exposed to toxins. But so Lynn's question was, okay, I eat so much broccoli and cauliflower, and those are cruciferous based vegetables, and they are goiter producing, goitrogen kind of a food. Should I be doing that? And so one of the things that I've been suggesting for Lynn to do is to start add iodine. So, whether it's liquid iodine or eating like a seaweeds as more snacks kind of thing. And she has already said that eating some seaweeds have been really good for her. So the question is, should I be eating the broccoli and cauliflower? And my answer is yes. Okay. Yes, you should be. Okay. But if you're always eating cruciferous based vegetables, okay, this happens a lot to a lot of people. They say, oh, I eat so many different vegetables, and they'll start naming it. I eat kale, I eat chard, I eat broccoli, I eat cauliflower, I eat Brussels sprouts, I eat cabbage. And I'm like, but those are all cruciferous vegetables, okay? So in a way, they're in the same family member, right? So what you may want to do is to start to introduce different vegetables, like eat celery roots, okay? Maybe eat parsley and cilantro. Maybe do something that is completely different that you've never tried before. Go to the local Asian market or something and get something completely different. So that's one. And would those kind of vegetables impact your goiter or, your thyroid functions? The answer is most of the time, no. Okay. As long as you're eating them once they've been cooked. Okay. This is why I'm a huge fan of boiling these foods first, not steaming, not sauteing, boiling them. Okay. You want to boil these vegetables and dump the green water so that you can get rid of oxalates and phytic acid, phytic nutrients that are basically nutrient blockers. Okay. Those are the ones that end up causing some issues for some people to build the goitrogen or goiter issues. Okay. Or thyroid issues. So in your case, no, you haven't hit the maximum point even. Okay. So don't worry about it. I just want you to start eating something other than cruciferous vegetables. Okay. So maybe start to introduce carrots in there, beets in there, have beet greens with it, or radishes, you know what I mean? Like daikon radish and maybe those red radishes, and those are starting to come into season, and we're coming into the season of squashes and pumpkins. So, maybe do things like that. Okay. And don't get too caught up in just broccoli and cauliflower. So that's what I have for you. All right. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So I think I'm going to wrap up soon. Chris, you have anything to add?
Just the only thing I would add to that is that the so-called goitrogenic foods, what's true about them is that in theory, they can produce or contribute to the formation of goiters, but in practice, you would have to eat like truckloads of them to get that much of it into your body to lead to that effect. It's not really from your food, most likely, that the goiters are forming. It's from the compounding effects of all the other things that are impacting thyroid function. So that's a whole separate topic. But unless you're eating them by the palate, you're probably okay, Lynn. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. But I just put up a note when we're talking about the boiling water. What we do is it's essentially blanching. So you just drop it into the boiling water for a couple minutes, and you'll notice that, let's just pick broccoli as an example, it will change color slightly from like a dusty green to a very vibrant green. And once you notice that color change, you're probably pretty close to ready. So it takes about 2 minutes for most of those. And then we rinse it with cold. But that's a good practice to do.
And then after that, we usually saute them again in some garlic and butter and ghee and things like that, and sea salt it and spice it up. So that's how I'd like you to eat it. And I think the ones that I worry the most is when people have hypothyroid conditions and they're on medications and they're juicing in the morning. They're juicing the raw green vegetables like every single day. That's when I start to worry about their thyroid impact to that. Okay. So that's something that, you really, really want to be careful about is not to juice green vegetables if you have thyroid issues, and to cook them. Okay. And Cynthia said, what else do you recommend for edema? There's so much I can recommend for edema, but what we want to understand about lymphatic system is the lymphatic system essentially is everywhere in your body, but it doesn't have a central station, so it doesn't have like a Penn Station in the New York City. Okay. So not everything comes into a pumping station like a heart would, right? Heart is not a pump either, by the way. It's a kind of an old misnomer, but lymphatic system only moves when you move. Okay. So if you're too sedentary, you're not brushing your skin or doing the fist things or slapping that we did, those are all fantastic things to do for your edema. Okay. And if you have edema in the lower legs, that means, one, you want to look into, are you sitting too much? Number two, look into your scars in your upper body region. What's going on with your scar tissues? Okay. And then also you want to look into what kind of toxins are you carrying around? Because the lower body edema often goes hand in hand with toxins. Okay. Toxic elements, heavy metals, maybe possibly mold and fungus and yeast. Maybe your colon is not moving through, so your stools are not really eliminating things. If you have excess estrogen in your body, that can cause you to get clogged up. Okay. So those are a couple of the things. And I did get one other question that's like, how do I email you? You can go to my website, masamicovey.com, and then you can contact me through that, or info@zenshininstitute.com. All right. So that's what I have. And let's continue this theme of how to keep working on your energy reserves. And one of the things that I would love for you guys to do for yourself this week is to look at what areas of your tires and your rugs, okay, that are wearing out, and see if you could remove the furniture or get your tires rotated, okay, and see if you can make changes so that you don't completely wear out by the time we welcome November. All right. So I will see you next Monday. And until then, thank you so much, and bye for now.